And it seems like people have been very quiet about this. But according to everybody who's actually there, who's watching practice, who see what's going on, Chase Claypool has looked pretty good this year. As a matter of fact, I was listening to one of the other great Bears podcasts out there. Greg Braggs Jr. has been talking about this as Chase Claypool has kind of been outperforming a lot of the guys. I don't want to say who or anything like that. I haven't witnessed it firsthand, but a lot of the reports coming in say that Chase Claypool has been performing very well. And it's obviously very early. We haven't seen him in a game yet, and there's a long ways to go. But these kind of things are very encouraging, especially for anybody, as a Bears fan who has to sit here and wear it because we gave up the first pick in the second round for Chase Claypool, which I think ultimately is going to end up being looked upon as a pretty good move, that it's going to end up being something that was beneficial for the Bears as long, and again, it doesn't come down to what Chase Claypool's numbers are. If it helps Justin Fields develop as a passer and as a quarterback, it is going to be a beneficial trade. This is the kind of thing that we need to see out of the Chicago Bears. And it is something that we're going to be talking about here in just a matter of moments, because we'll be talking about the depth chart and how much different the wide receiver depth chart looks from the depth chart that we went into camp with last year. So at the very least, that is a huge upgrade. So it's encouraging to see what Chase, Chase Claypool is doing well when the internet memes have stopped, when the jokes have stopped and all that stuff. But let the haters hate. We got a game on Saturday, But listen, we got so much to get to. So Sammy, why don't we go ahead and start the show?
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night. You know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. Another great show in store for you tonight. Our friend Brendan Chagrew will be joining us once again. We'll talk about what he saw at Bears camp here on Tuesday. We can look forward to the game on Saturday against the Tennessee Titans. And just a quick programming note, we will be joining you live, the Sick Podcast, and our friends over with the Tennessee Titans podcast as well. We're going to be talking about that Bears and Titans games, going over some of the highlights immediately after that contest ends. Of course, you can watch that nationally on the NFL Network, and of course locally. Check your local listings, I guess I should say. But at first, in case you missed it, and I'm sure that you didn't, Yannick Ngakoue is now a member of the Chicago Bears. He's finally here. Very happy about that. The Bears' unofficial depth chart is out, which is great. A couple of things of note: Velus Jones is ahead of Dante Pettis, which is huge right now. On the defensive side of the football, Travis Gibson is fourth string. Kindle Vidor is almost off the depth chart. Two guys that we counted on to be starters last season are now on the bubble, it seems. If you're to believe the depth chart and what it means right now at this point of the season, like there's some nervous time for those two fellas. Obviously, a lot of training camp left to get yourself back into the rotation. But here, let's talk about all that stuff, because this is one of our favorite guys, and we've had him on multiple times. He's an assistant editor with the Bears Wire. He is one of the co-hosts, one of our favorite podcasts, the Bear Down Chicago Pod. Love going on with those guys. I think every single one of them has been on now. If not, that is my fault. And Brendan can check in with that. But he's also most notably, he is our second favorite saxophone player in the world. We'll ask him who our first is. But please welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, our friend Brendan Chagrew. How are you? How you living?
What's up, Adam? I am living good. As our friend and guest on this show, Jack Wright, has said, it's beginning to feel a lot like football. I mean,
yes,
you could not have asked for a better day in Chicagoland today. Just the beautiful breeze, football's in the air, literally and figuratively. So my juices are flowing. So I'm really excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I was going to tell you, again, you're my second favorite saxophone player of all time. You're behind Kirk Pengilly. Do you even know who Kirk Pengilly is?
I don't. And I actually do know like a lot of saxophone players out there. So this one surprises me.
He was the saxophone guy for In Excess. If you ever
Okay.
notice, Yannick incorporated a lot of horns because Kirk could play the saxophone, obviously. But I have you ahead of Rob Lowe. I don't know if Rob Lowe is an actual saxophone player or if he just played it in one of those movies in the 90s. But I'm like, well, I like you more than him. But we're very excited to have you here. We did see that you're out at training camp, and I guess we'll start with the wide receiver position because I'm really curious about this. You heard me talking about Chase Claypool at the top of the show, but what are your early impressions of DJ Moore? Because it seems like everything out of Bears camp right now is DJ Moore and the incredible things that he's doing on the field. What were your impressions?
Yeah, those all of the news, all of the reports, they are warranted. He's the guy. I mean, he's the trusted connection that Fields has now. You've seen it both in individual drills and team practices. I'll give you an example today. They open up one-on-one drills. DJ Moore is going up against Tyreek Stevenson, just easily obliterates him for like a little double move in the corner of the end zone, catches it, gets the feed in right away. And that starts one-on-ones. And that gets the fans going, that gets the offense going. And you could just see that Fields trusts him to make those tough catches in traffic. I've said it's like easy pitch and catch. Like no matter what, DJ Moore is coming down with the ball. He's got strong hands, whether a corner is draped all over him. Fields is already trusting that. You've heard the reports. I've heard the reports when I haven't been able to be there. And I can say it's definitely backed up. Like DJ Moore is the easily top wide receiver on this team. I think he's the best wide receiver that the Bears have had since Brandon Marshall.
Right.
I think he's a better route runner than Brandon Marshall, but I mean, he's the real deal. He really is. I think he's jolting this offense in a big way.
I got in a lot of trouble. I was on some podcast, and I think it was Taylor Dahl's podcast, and I said that DJ Moore is better than Stephon Diggs, and I will still die on this hill. Did I bite off a little bit? Did I bite off too much? Is this like my first time to Portillo's and I got the double dip Italian beef and you shouldn't take that big of a swing. I think it's accurate because I don't think that the DJ Moore's had the benefit of playing with some of the quarterbacks that Stephon Diggs has been able to play with in his NFL career. I will die on that hill, but is that too rich for your blood?
No, I think you kind of push the boundary just a little bit there because Stephon Diggs really took that big step with Josh Allen when he went there in 2020. I mean, we talk about what Stephon Diggs has done for Josh Allen. Look what Josh Allen has done for Stephon Diggs. You compare their careers kind of like the first 5 years or so between Stephon Diggs and DJ Moore. They're pretty much the same. Diggs just has a little more touchdowns. We know that DJ Moore doesn't find the end zone or didn't when he was with Carolina. Right. And we like even with Kirk Cousins, when Stephon Diggs was there, Kirk Cousins, I'll say a good passer. He's a really good quarterback. DJ Moore has not had that consistent passer in Carolina. So I don't think it's that much of a stretch, really. I think that's okay. And I do think that not only DJ Moore is going to elevate Fields, I think Fields is going to elevate DJ Moore too.
And Stephon Diggs obviously had the signature moment in the NFL. He had the walk-off touchdown against the Saints in the playoffs. In that, I mean, one of the most incredible plays that I've seen, like just watching that unfold, I can still remember it to this day. And I think that kind of helps him. Now, this isn't a shot at Stephon Diggs. I always love it because fans get so into their feelings. Like, so you think he sucks? And you're like, no, I'm not saying that he sucks. Like, it's not about that. It's just like, I just think that somebody could be better, or they're both very good. Mm-hmm. It reminds me of something too. I was putting together my tier rankings for fantasy football. And I'm like, I think Jalen Hurts is kind of a tier below guys like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and even Josh Allen, because he's not going to run for 13 touchdowns. And again, the Eagle fans get all up into their feelings. And since I'm talking about this, I got this. This is a fine time to point out that the easiest way, you'll be amazed to know, Brendan, the easiest way to play fantasy football is with Underdog Fantasy. I'm surprising Sammy now too. I'm just throwing this out of the blue. But it's so easy to get started. Just go to underdogfantasy.com, or even better yet, go down and download the app. You want the app on your phone because it'll give you all the player news as it happens. Roquan Johnson upgraded from questionable to healthy, things like that. It shows up on your phone. It's a great way to get started. And if you go in right now, and if you're a first-time user, use the promo code SICK, and Underdog Fantasy will match your initial deposit up to $100. And the great thing, too, is I know a lot of people always want to take me on in fantasy football. We're going to give you that opportunity this season. we're going to have some leagues set up to where you can go mano a mano against me. You've been sitting here talking, not you, but like all the other people out there, whoever wanted to come after the big dog, the big fella, you know what? That's fine. We're going to go out there. We're going to give you an opportunity to take your shot at me. Just go to underdogfantasy.com or download the app and get that started. So, and DJ Moore is somebody that I will be picking in fantasy. But Chase Claypool really interests me because I've noticed like Greg Braggs has been one, not a hater, but skeptical of the trade, and it's completely done a 180. What did you see out of Chase Claypool? What do you think about his progress so far? What did you make of him out on the field?
I really think he's been the king of camp overall. Now, I didn't see too much today, unfortunately. And I was really excited to see his progress because I've been at camp a few days. I think it was like the first or second day. He had some great passes, great catches and individual drills, just really beating his defender and comeback routes and over the middle. So, and knowing that he's been building up and not only as a player and being more of a trusted connection with Fields as that chemistry has grown, but just as a leader, I was so happy to hear that he was kind of taking on Eddie Jackson on Saturday's practice after he took exception to a late hit, because the defense has been chirping. Defense has been talking a lot. They've, for a reason, they've been backing up their play. They've been giving the offense fits. And so the offense finally came back and bit back. And Chase Claypool was one guy that said, I'm not going to take this anymore. So not only just the fact that he's performing on the field, he's got those, I said it with DJ Moore. I think Chase Claypool does too. He's got these strong hands, holds onto the ball, even when guys are trying to knock it out. But just the fact that you can feel that he's growing as a leader. My favorite thing I saw from him today was 20 minutes after practice, he and Equinemius St. Brown are still catching deep balls, over the shoulder passes from the jugs machine. He's waiting around for the kids. Like he's putting in the extra work. And I'm taking note of that because I'm sure, as you've seen the reports right before camp, maybe he's not the hardest worker. Maybe his mind's elsewhere. I think that's so far from the truth, and everything that we've seen on the field backs that up. So I'm really happy with what I've seen so far. And I had a controversial take over the weekend. I said, I think Claypool is inching up towards that wide receiver 2 over Mooney. Now, Mooney had a little more. Mooney did have a few more targets today. So perhaps Justin Fields saw that and said, I got to get my guy Darnell going. But he's really making a statement, and I'm really happy to see it because that trade has been panned by a lot of people. Of course, when you're giving up the 32nd overall pick, you want to get a lot in return for that. And so far in camp, we're seeing that this could be a good season. Probably, one of the best seasons Claypool's had as a pro.
And it really is, when you look at the draft, if Chase Claypool was available at pick 32 this year, I always think like, okay, if they would have drafted Chase Claypool or a Chase Claypool type, I would have been very happy with it. Like, okay, that makes sense. We need a lot of receiving help. You mentioned, Darnell Mooney getting more targets, Chase Claypool getting into the mix. You mentioned Brandon Marshall earlier. And I when I think of Cutler, I think of him giving Marshall 200 targets. As much as we love hearing about the connection with DJ Moore, do you get a sense watching practice, like all the targets are going to go to DJ Moore, or do you think Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney are going to get their opportunities as well?
It's funny you say that. So right before camp, I was starting to get that worry too, because I think back to the 2012 offense, and that was fun at times because Brandon Marshall dominated everybody. He had like 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was an all-pro, but nobody else did anything. I think the next closest wide receiver was Earl Bennett with like 400 yards or something. So as we're seeing DJ Moore in OTAs and minicamp, and you just see that he's clearly the best receiver on the field, that was when Chase Claypool had some of those nagging injuries. That was when Darnell Mooney was still coming back from his broken ankle. So I started to get that worry too. But now seeing what Fields is doing in practice, yes, it's clear DJ Moore is his number one, but he's spreading the ball around too. He's getting Claypool involved. Like I said, he got Mooney involved today. There were quite a few throws to Tyler Scott too, which I thought were good. And those two actually were connecting quite a bit in team drills. So that worry's come down quite a bit because I do think that he knows he has the connection in Mooney, and he's been ramped up since coming back from that rehab. And like I said, with Claypool doing what he's done in camp, I don't feel that way anymore, thankfully, because that's a legit concern. And your offense is going to be fun for a bit if you're going to throw 150 targets and just pepper one guy with passes, but you're not going to go too far if the rest of the receiving core can't do it.
Yeah, it's really one of those things. I remember that fantasy football season of having Brandon Marshall there and having all the targets, and it was great. I think that was the year. I think it was Manning's first year in Denver. I think those collided. And because Manning had 37 touchdown passes that year. I drafted him in the 12th round because nobody wanted him, which, by the way, another little quick fantasy tip of everybody, and Hard Knocks is starting this evening. Anybody who's sleeping on Aaron Rodgers, we know as well as anybody, you guys stop, not us, not you, but stop doubting Aaron Rodgers. He's going to go out there and he's going to put up, you piss him off more because I'm drafting him in fantasy. He's going to put up an MVP-like season. He won't win it because Patrick Mahomes is now that guy who automatically gets kissed into the MVP as long as he plays 17 games. But it's one of those things it tickles me. But I do remember that year with Marshall and how amazing it was. And I think that what I will probably be doing in the next couple of days is going back and realize, and I know a lot of people, because I, like you, had that concern with DJ Moore, but then I remembered his receivers in college were Chris Olave. We're talking about Justin Fields, of course. Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba, not Jameson. It was Garrett Wilson. Yeah. It's I think all those guys ate that year. Because if I'm not mistaken, Wilson and Olave both had double-digit touchdowns, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba had 100 receptions. He spread it out pretty evenly to where it should give you a lot of you should be comfortable with him being able to find some of the guys. You mentioned Tyler Scott a moment ago. What did you see? We're big Tyler Scott fans here. We might even be the Tyler Scott show of record, but how did he look? What's the news? How's he? I know that we spent a lot of this. Our showrunner Anello was hitting you up in the green room. I'm like, Anello, we got to save this for the show. So I'm sorry if you're repeating it. I forget what we talked about, but how does Tyler Scott look?
That's all right. And you guys, I think you were the first interview, since he came on the Bears. So I recognize that as you were the OG podcast to have him on. So I have respect for that. But look, Tyler Scott is a frustrating player in the sense that he is beating his guys off the line consistently. His footwork is immaculate, I'll say. And he's just able to, put double moves on defenders, put them on their cleats. He had in one-on-one drills today, did the same thing to Jalen Johnson, the Bears' top corner. And Jalen's had a pretty good camp, I'll say.
Yeah.
But he puts him on the ground, and all he has to do is catch the ball, and he drops it. So Tyler Scott has had, case of the drops for much of training camp. He's had obviously some big moments. He's had some deep balls earlier in camp. So at first glance, when I was watching practice, I'm like, hey, here we go again. We're going to see another interesting performance from Tyler Scott. But he rebounded really nicely, especially in team drills. He had a pass coming across the middle. I can't remember if it was Justin Fields or PJ Walker. I thought it was PJ Walker. It could have been Fields, but regardless, Scott gets the pass across the middle, turns upfield, and goes all the way to the end zone, even when defenders stop chasing him. And I love those effort plays from guys because you play how you practice. You go until, there's no more daylight left. He takes it all the way, makes sure he gets to the end zone. He had a really nice catch in the 2-minute drill. This one definitely from Fields. I thought it was his best catch. He kind of had to adjust to the ball a little bit, make an awkward looking catch as the offense was trying to go downfield to stop the clock to kick a game expiring field goal. So things like that give me hope because he's finding space. He's getting open. He just has to consistently bring the ball in. But I'm really excited for him. I think that he's definitely going to be a weapon for this year. And I think it's the perfect opportunity for him because he's playing behind more Claypool, Mooney. He's not expected to be this, 800-yard receiver. I think if he gives you 400, 500 yards max, a couple touchdowns and becomes a deep threat, that's really good. That would be phenomenal for his rookie season.
Yeah, that's something that we're looking forward to. Again, with the receiver room being the way that it is now, he doesn't need to come out and have that big role. And I'll also remind people, they thought that Jamar Chase couldn't catch the football during his rookie season.
That's
right. And inexplicably is like, oh, I missed the white stripe on the football. And everybody took that to mean this guy forgot how to play football. And I know now that people will go out there, and the guys who do not root for the Bears, the Lions fans in this chat, oh, here's Rank again. He was, first of all, it was DJ Moore was better than Stephon Diggs. Now he's saying Tyler Scott is Jamar. I'm not saying it's Jamar Chase. I'm just saying that sometimes that people can overreact to young players getting adjusted to the NFL. And so we're big Tyler Scott guys here, but the guy who we've loved since day one as well, we're also the Velus Jones Jr. show of record. We're excited. I know it's nervous time, but you've seen him up there. How has he looked so far?
He's looked okay.
Give me better news.
I'm sorry, I can't lie to you. I mean, I know we're trying to pump up the Bears and everything. He's had his moments. Velus, of course, still has the speed. He has the quickness. I will say his special teams drills have looked much better. And I think that's where he's potentially going to make the biggest impact this year. Because, of course, last year he struggled with fumbled punts. He couldn't field them cleanly, didn't know when to field them either. I have not seen that this year yet, which I think is positive. Now, he, like Tyler Scott, has struggled with drops a little bit right after. So the one-on-one drill I mentioned with Scott, Velus comes right after that, puts a nice move on his defender. Maybe not as clean as Scott, but still, has space to make a play. Ball goes right off his hands. And it was a little high, but still, you kind of, it's similar. It's a similar story between the two. Both have tremendous abilities. They just sometimes struggle with consistently catching the ball. But knowing that Velus Jones is atop the depth chart for a specialist role, I think is promising. With Dante Pettis still out, that definitely works in his favor. And I think this coaching staff really does want to get the most out of him. And now, similar to Scott, Velus doesn't have to have that pressure on being the number 2 wide receiver last year. And he's also healthy. Last year in camp, he was dealing with some nagging injuries. Believe he missed the first preseason game, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Hasn't had that this year. So definitely a positive step in the right direction. But again, still has issues with the drops.
And it's one of those things too, where I would never want to get rid of somebody too quickly. And I think that ultimately the Bears view him in a similar fashion to the way that a lot of teams are now viewing Cordell Patterson and what he's able to do and being this multifaceted guy. I really hope that Velus can take advantage of the special teams. I know they've tried Tyler Scott there a couple of times, but I don't want to put guys back there like, well, let's see what he can do because he's talented. Like, no, I want people who know how to do this. And last year, even Velus, who's had experience with special teams, he not only struggled, he cost us games. Like he did. And I'm not going to run from that. We've all you make mistakes, like it happens. That game against Washington, that is one of the things that, was unfortunate. I was heartbroken when that happened. But as long as he can come in and, like you said, if he can come in and be that special teams guy and not necessarily always being the guy who's doing returns and all that stuff, but anything on special teams he can do, as long as he commits to that, he is going to find a way onto this roster and hopefully he can continue to grow. Patterson, it took him some time to really take off and be the player that he is. I think it would be foolish to give up on Velus. Although we do got to say that you did send this to me. And I wanted to show everybody. I've not showed anybody this video until now. I was very thrilled with this when I saw this come. You said this. Sarah, do we have the video of Velus from camp? If not,
it's Adam Rank says hi.
I'm telling him what's happening.
There he is, my guy Velus Jones Jr. Listen, I check in with him from time to time. I know I probably annoy him on Instagram. Like, hey, how's it going? I actually had encouraging words for him. I actually will check in, and this has got to annoy the S out of him. Although I remember one time Kyle Long once told me, number 1, we appreciate your support, and number 2, never name drop. And that no, he was like, no, he's like, I appreciate that you were always supportive. So I would never talk to Velus the day of the game, but maybe a couple days later, especially Tuesday or Wednesday when they're getting ready for practice. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, hey, you know what? Let's attack practice this week.
Yeah. Or a bye week or something. Say, hey, hope you're healthy. Hope everything's good. Rooting for you the rest of the season, all of that. So no, the moment I saw him, I'm like, you know what? I know Rank's a big fan. I just wanted to give him a little shout out. I said, yeah, Adam Rank says hi. So, big smile came across his face. So I'm glad that made your day. And I wanted to send that to you.
He didn't trip. So that was cool. Like who? Yeah. He didn't do the head cock. Like, who's this person? So it's funny. We're talking about the wide receivers. I do want to talk a little bit about Justin Fields. Now, before you came onto the show, you were saying you had some interesting notes about him. Can you repeat them? Since Anello already took no, but you said, no, one of the things that you said is that the ball looks livelier coming out of his hand. What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
I think it's faster. It's something, it looks like it's moving more, when you have that quick release and there's not as much hesitancy. I think he's trusting his receivers. He's trusting the scheme. There's not, and some people may disagree. Some people may say like, oh, he's still thinking too much. I saw him doing more than thinking. And going to camp last year, a few practices, I didn't see that, whether it was because of his receivers or whether it was because of the system or both. It looked like the ball was coming out of his hands quicker. It was more accurate. He was really, really solid in the short and intermediate game. And I actually thought that last year, that was kind of a weakness for him. He wasn't as accurate throwing those slants or those curls or anything like that. He's trusting where his guys are at and what his guys can do. The biggest issue I saw, and it sounds like it's been more of an issue throughout camp, is the deep ball, which again surprises me because that was his strength early on in his NFL career as well as coming out of college. He underthrew Darnell Mooney on a deep route down the sideline. It was picked off by Tyreek Stevenson. Stevenson made a good play on the ball. He high pointed it. Ball was still underthrown. There was a little bit of a jersey tug potentially on Chase Claypool on another deep ball. Couldn't get there either. And then on an Equanimeous St. Brown deep ball, he just threw it out of bounds. I don't know what was going on. It wasn't intended to go out of bounds, I don't think. The pocket was flush though, so maybe that was an issue. But yeah, the deep ball just wasn't there today. But I was really impressed with what I saw just in the short game. I feel like he's getting the ball out a lot quicker. He's not thinking, like I said. So it's good to see.
No, you want to see that. I always kind of equate it to where Justin Fields is like one of those golfers that bombs it off the tee, but he really needs to clean it up in the intermediate irons, maybe the short irons, a 60 degree. Come hang out. I'll get you sorted. I'm the exact opposite. And so it reminds me like of Victor Hovland, who, great golfer, but was not comparatively to other professional PGA players, who was just not good around the greens, who's now really turned that around and has become one of the most proficient guys around the green, which is why he continues to finish top 5 in all these tournaments. And I think that is the biggest thing for Justin Fields. So if you ever hear of a story or if you have an observation where it's like, the deep ball wasn't there, it's like, all right, well, you can spray the deep ball every once in a while. But as long as he's making those throws and getting the ball, getting rid of the ball quickly, I think that's what you want. And I think that's the kind of progress that we want from Justin Fields. And it shows that he's working on some of the limitations of his game. Going to the defensive side of actually, you know what? Let me do this. The tackles. How do the tackles look? Because I saw somebody, I don't know if it was you or one of the other people who was at camp today, talking about how Braxton Jones looked pretty good against the bull rush today. But how did the tackles look?
Yeah, that was me. And I purposely, there's so much to watch at training camp. I'm sure you've been there. There's so many times, you're trying to like catch everything and, view different positions. And so I made it a point a couple times. I'm like, I need to see the offensive line, even though they're not in pads. I need to see how these tackles look. So I'm zeroing in on Braxton Jones on one play, and he's actually going against Andrew Billings, which I was surprised about. He's an interior guy. Just a mismatch issue, I guess. And Billings is a big guy. Like, it if you've seen him, he's a massive human being, and he just put it on Braxton Jones and he held his own. And of course, knowing that Braxton struggled against the bull rush last year, I was really impressed with that. And I'm like, okay, he's given his quarterback time. He still got pushed back a little bit, but not enough where it impeded the quarterback in any way. Quarterback still had plenty of time to get the ball out. So that was something I took note of. I did the same thing for Darnell Wright. Once the sides were flipped a little bit, I could view Darnell a little bit closer. And early on, I don't want to say I wasn't impressed. I just knew there were going to be growing pains. Veteran Terrell Lewis got the best of him a couple times. He was going around him. He's still getting his feet under him. But you see the ability, and you see and also I'll just say Terrell Lewis, this was this was like, a few days ago. So this wasn't this practice, but going into this practice, you see the ability and you see the quickness of his feet and his hands. And you just look at a guy that big, and he just did this move. I don't know. He got his hands out of the way and shifted where he was going to be blocking. And I noted to myself, I'm like, tackles aren't supposed to move like that. They're not supposed to be that quick and that agile to adjust to what the defense is giving them. But he showed that. And so my biggest thing with Darnell Wright, and I'm sure the history with Bears first-round tackles over the last 20 years or so, they have not stayed healthy. And whether it's that they couldn't play or what, their rookie seasons were lost. And so they never got a chance to develop guys like Mark Colombo, Gabe Karimi, and Chris Williams. So my big ask and just, hope with Darnell Wright, no matter what happens, is that he just stays healthy, because we saw with Braxton Jones, those 17 games, last year were paramount to his development. And he knew exactly what he needed to work on. He had some struggles. He gave up a lot of sacks, but he was able to get those reps underneath him and take a huge step in his development. Now, obviously expectations are bigger and higher for Darnell Wright, but if he can just stay on the field and get those reps and get through this rookie season unscathed, no matter how bad it looks at times, I think that's going to be the biggest win of all, because you then go into year 2, you're not starting from scratch and you know exactly what you need to improve upon. But I mean, I saw some of those traits today and I was really excited for what I saw.
If Ryan Poles has gone out there and locked down the tackle position for the next decade with these first 2 drafts of his, that is an amazing accomplishment. Probably, the quarterback was already settled, hopefully. But having the bookend tackles is something that could really be something to move this team forward. And it's been such an issue for the longest time. You even talk about injuries, like Kyle Long, had battled through a lot of injuries, had to be kicked inside at some point. I think we always envisioned him being a tackle, but was a damn good guard, kind of like what Tevin Jenkins is going through. So, Tevin Jenkins, it feels pretty good. The offensive line feels pretty good. It feels like, again, Carmen and I have talked about this at great length of knowing what the lineup is. When they dropped the depth chart today, it wasn't like, oh my God, this guy's the, okay, yeah, that's exactly what we expected it to be. And what we've seen over the last couple of days or couple of weeks. So it is refreshing to have that settled, and it might not be the greatest offensive line of all time, but I think it's pretty good. And that's what the Bears need right now to be pretty good. And speaking of pretty good, Yannick Ngakoue, I like this player. I've wanted him on the team for quite some time. Though a couple of days ago, we were able to get the deal done. I really like this move. How did you like it? I know Matt Eberflus came out and said he's going to play against the run, which of course he's going to say that, but I don't care. Sometimes you get a guy who's a specialist, and whether he's coming out of the bullpen or not, you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes you need that specialist. And if he's going to come in there and put pressure on the quarterback, I'm here for it. I love this move. What did you think of us getting Yannick Ngakoue?
It's an adjustment, I know. No, I was thrilled. I mean, this was the top pass rusher on the market. The fit just seemed like it was inevitably going to get done, whether it was him or Justin Houston. But the fact that you got a 28-year-old talented pass rusher who hasn't had less than 8 sacks in his entire NFL career. He has the 5th most forced fumbles in his entire NFL career since 2016. He's only behind guys like, Aaron Donald, Chandler Jones, Khalil Mack, couple of guys. They're okay. But yeah, it shows he's like a true pass rusher. And to get him on that 1-year deal, $10 million, the Bears had money to spend. So that's not an issue. The concern that people have brought up is that, well, he's been on a ton of teams here for the last few years. He's bounced around. And I read Tyler Dunn's newsletter that he put out last year. He does this Go Long site, and he had a fantastic interview with Ngakoue. And basically what happened was he detailed why he moved on from Jacksonville and Minnesota and Baltimore and all of that. And essentially, yes, there was a dispute with Jacksonville. He wanted that multi-year deal. They weren't going to give it to him. There was that public spat with Tony Khan. But when he got to Minnesota, they thought they were going to be contenders, and they weren't. And so Rick Spielman came to him and said, do you want to go to a contender? Because we'll let you go if you want. We'll give you that wish. And he said, you know what? I will. I want to do that. I want to play for a playoff team. So he goes to the Ravens. didn't fit the defense. And he said in hindsight, I should have stayed because that was better for my career. It just wasn't a good fit scheme-wise with the Ravens. Nothing wrong with the culture or anything. Goes to the Raiders on a multi-year deal. Maybe, does pretty well there with Max Crosby, but they feel like they upgrade with Chandler Jones now and see Ngakoue as expendable because they could use defensive back help. So they get Rock Ya-Sin back. And now he goes to the Colts and then is a free agent again. It's just, it feels like there's been a few like wrong place, wrong time kind of deal in terms of like scheme and, what teams are trying to get out of other players. So from talking to it and hearing other people who have covered him in other areas, that he doesn't seem to be a bad locker room guy overall. So I just, for anyone who's concerned about the number of teams, I think that sort of dispels that. Of course, that's Ngakoue's side. But in terms of the fit, the Bears needed a mercenary pass rusher. And we can talk about the concern about the run, but the truth is he's actually better against the run, according to PFF, than Trevis Gibson last year and Dominique Robinson. So it may not be much better, but they still upgraded with that. So that still says something. And he seems motivated. He seems ready to go. Got to see him a little bit today. He wasn't doing team drills yet. They're still ramping him up, but just seeing his get off, it's such a quick get off. I'm excited to see what he does to David Bakhtiari week 1, assuming he plays, because I really do think that he's going to come out of come out off the line, literally firing and taking down Jordan Love. But yeah, the fit was there. It really seems like there was no locker room concerns or anything. They just wanted to see the years or the money potentially work, and it did.
Yeah, the whole thing, and I'm a big Tony Khan fan. Everybody knows I like AEW. I like Tony Khan, and I think he's a good guy. And it was always, I don't know, it was always interesting to me that he had the public disputes with both Yannick Ngakoue and Jalen Ramsey. And it's like, God, it's such a shame that it never worked out for Jacksonville, because Yannick was part of that Saxonville team that was so good. That was a Miles Jack correct call away from going to the Super Bowl. And who knows what happens when they're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's been a player that I've really been intrigued with for years, even though he was sparring with Tony. I still kind of believed in him, and everything, as you said, it always kind of works out that way. I really didn't like it when he went to Minnesota. I was like, gosh, dang it.
I know.
I was like, I didn't like that at all. But thankfully, like you said, Minnesota blew at the time. And so he had to get out of there. And Baltimore is such a weird place that, as good as they are, like, you really have to fit the mold of a Ravens type of player. And of course, like, Roquan Smith has done really well there, which is great for him. I'm not upset about that at all. It is interesting that he has the same statistics with the Ravens that he did with the Bears, but now all of a sudden he's the best line. Like, he was so, like, nobody said, like, whenever we went to talk about Roquan Smith, people thought we were idiots. Like, duh, he's not that good. Duh, shut up. Like, he's not that good. Like,
he just makes stats. He just makes tackles. That's it. Like, he's a stat guy.
He's a stat guy. Yeah. Like, cause like we would be like, you know what? Like, long, the long names of Bill George, Dick Butkus, Mike Singletary, Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs. Here comes oh, no, you're being stupid. How dare you? Like, okay, fine. Like, oh, all right. Apparently I don't know anything about football. And then he goes to the Ravens and you're like, no, what a great find this guy was. Like, he's so good. Like, he's doing the exact same thing he was doing in Chicago, everybody. Like, he's not done anything different than what he was doing before, but you guys just, and you know what? I think it goes to, like, this is the way we need the Bears franchise to start going once again, is when you play for the Ravens, they just assume you're good. Like, no matter what, like, oh, that guy's good. With the Bears, you're like, that guy sucks. Like, it's been that way. And it's something that we have to turn around. And hopefully, with what Ryan Poles has been able to do, hopefully it'll become one of those things like, well, if the Bears have him, he must be. It's like when the Steelers draft a wide receiver. You're like, he must be okay. Like, yep, you'll be fine. When George Pickens was drafted by the Steelers, I was like, son of a b. Of all the teams, I didn't want him to go to the Packers, and I didn't want him to go to the Steelers, because you're like, the Steelers believe in him. Then that's, oh, God, he's probably going to be good. And even if he is, I think that as long as Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker continue to play well as they've played and as they've shown, I don't think, although Jaquan Brisker still owes us an interview. I've tried to be cool about it, because we were playing in the Three Rivers Classic. The Washington Wild Things played host to this Cam Hayward charity softball game, and Jaquan Brisker was given my glove. Like, I was up batting, and I didn't realize somebody, because he's left-handed, and they're like, hey, here's a left-handed glove. I'm like, you gave him the one that's broken in, because they gave us these brand new Rawlings gloves. And I'm like, give him that one, because I obviously didn't want that one. I was going to keep my old one anyways. But I said, hey, brother, I go, you're going to have to come on the show now. And he's like, bet, which I assume means good. Means yes. I don't know. I'm trying to seem hip, but and saying hip means that you are not. But in any event, do you have time? Can you stick around for some fan questions, or do you got to go?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm here.
We don't want to keep you too long. I don't want to overstay. Lester last week, he had to go. It's like, I gotta go. Like, we appreciate him coming on. We appreciate anybody who's willing to take the time and join us here. So we do appreciate it. Did want to extend you. But Sammy, what about that? Do we have any questions from the crowd? Bruja 7. The Bears lost 12 games by allowing an average of 26 points last season. Can this revamped defense hold teams under 30 points per game, or will the offense need to score 30 points to win? I want to take this real quick, and then I'll kick it to you, because this is one of the things that you mentioned a moment ago that really seems encouraging to me. When you were talking about Chase Claypool, it was that the defense has been chirping, and I think that the defense knows that you were letting down Justin Fields. Like, you guys really screwed him in a lot of games, to the point of when Justin Fields once tried to apologize, the defense like, no, we're not doing that. We have not supported you as we should. I actually like that the defense has been chirping and feeling themselves, because, like, I hope you feel good and I hope you play well. And if that's what it takes to get you to play better and feel better, I'm not going to be upset with it in any sense of the imagination. Chirp, do what you got to do. I kind of like that. How do you take that? And how good do you think that the defense could be this season?
No, I had no issue with it whatsoever. And I liked it too, because yes, even though the offense struggled, and we all want to root for the offense because the Bears never have had, a consistent good offense in, my lifetime, but it's two sides. And the defense was bad last year in a number of areas, and they've done a lot to revamp that, especially with the linebackers, TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, who we haven't talked about them. They both look just like freaks of nature. And TJ Edwards made a great play when I was in camp a few days ago as well, with an interception. Tremaine Edmonds as well, getting picks off deflections. But it just shows that this unit is growing together. And I'm really excited I'm working my way back here. The secondary, I think, could be I don't want to say one of the best in football, but one of the most improved positions out there.
Say it.
I don't want to go that far yet, because those are receipts. But I'm really excited about what the secondary can do. Jaquan Brisker has flashed every single practice that he's played. He has just an insane instinct for the ball and just to make a play. Playing with Eddie Jackson has helped as well. Kyler Gordon is settling in at the nickel position really, really well. I will make a bold prediction. I'm saying Kyler Gordon is going to lead the league in tackles for loss among defensive backs, or at least cornerbacks. Because this guy, they call him Spider-Man. He's got those spidey senses. He can sniff out a play at the line of scrimmage and drop a guy and just lead to a tackle for loss. Jalen Johnson looks good. I think Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith, those two are battling. They've had their moments as well. I think the arrow's only pointing up on Stevenson, but potentially Smith too. It's the front four that's really going to be the big question. Now, we talked about Ngakoue. DeMarcus Walker had a career year last year. Can he get better? They're improved. So I think they can. To answer Bruja's question, shout out to him. He's a great dude. I think they can improve to get there. So the offense doesn't necessarily need to score 30. They've revamped enough where it's going to be okay. And you look at the schedule, some of those offenses aren't that imposing. Yes, we have the Chiefs. Yes, the Chargers and all that. But Tampa Bay, what's the Packers offense going to look like? Washington, is Carolina really going to be that good? Like, I don't want to say the strength of schedule issue yet, because we don't know what these teams are going to look like. But I think this defense is going to be vastly improved. But it also hinges on that front four and what they can do.
You got to get pressure up the middle. I think the two rookies and the guys in Justin Jones and all those guys, when you look at this defense, they got to get pressure underneath the quarterback, get him off his feet, get him out of his spots. And when you look at some of those teams, you're like, this is where it's going to be a real problem. Now there's really no defense for Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. But then when you look at some of the other quarterbacks that they're going to be facing, like who knows? Like I find it amusing that there was a Raiders fan in my mentions on Twitter. I was talking about something that was unrelated to this. And he go, oh, you think the Bears are better than the Raiders? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Like, have you seen your Raiders roster? Like, who is your quarterback? When the Bears play the Raiders, who is going to be the Bears quarterback? Is Jimmy Garoppolo still going to be healthy? Is it going to be Brian Hoyer? Is it going to be Tom Brady? I mean, it'll probably be a former Patriot at some point, but good Lord. And I look at this, and even with the thing with Jordan Love, and God bless it, Carmen, I wish Carmen was here tonight because I want her to defend these takes about like, she's like, if you think I'm insane, and I know she's not implying this, but like whenever you see a throw in a scrimmage and you're like, that's Mahomes-esque, like just stop. We're not doing this. He's not Mahomes. He's just not. And he's made some throws and it's fine. And it's one of the things like with Jahmyr Gibbs made a great play against one of the Giants linebackers today where he just smoked him, just ran right past him. Everybody's like, well, that guy's, I'm like, you know what? Sometimes people make good plays and it's fine to say that. But I think that we've got a defense that can go out there and make plays as well. And I think that the NFL model, and one that the Bears are embracing right now, is that you don't need a shutdown 85 Bears defense because that doesn't work in the modern NFL anymore. Any team that puts way too many resources onto the defensive side of the football is going to end up screwed. Just look at what happens to the Commanders this year. You can't do that anymore. You can't. The margin of error, like the margin of victory, is so thin. Like we went through that in 2018. Like everything went perfect. You could not have asked for a better situation, a defense that wasn't getting injured, although Eddie Jackson got hurt before the playoffs started, but a defense that was relatively healthy, playing at the top of their game, dominating, and yet still it came down to a missed field goal. You got to have an offense that scores. So I think that the defense has got to go out there and, like Hee-Haw is saying, be a speed bump, make a stop when you need to. That's what makes the Chiefs so good, is that when they need to make big stops, they make it. And the offense can finish off the job. And I think that's what we're going to see out of the Bears moving forward, which was probably a longer answer than Hee-Haw. So Hee-Haw, good guy.
Bruja, yeah, he's a follower of ours. Yeah, he follows the podcast, follows me. Great question.
Is he only here because of you? All right,
I don't know, but if he, you know what, I appreciate the question, man.
I appreciate him being here. I'm glad that I hope he's subscribed. If you enjoy this, if you're here for Brandon and you're like, I've never heard of Rank before, and you like what you've seen so far, please like and subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate it, and we love to spread the wealth around as well. In any event, and go down to the Bear Down Chicago pod. If you've not listened to their podcast yet, I implore you to do it. It is one that it is a must listen. You guys still do Sunday nights, or at least you were during the off season. So go check them out.
Yep, we just had we're doing the NFC North preview. So we talked to some Vikings fans. We just had Jason Hirschhorn on from The Leap. Previewing the Packers. Yeah, so he gave some great insight and analysis on what to expect from them. Measured takes from him. Unlike some Packers writers, you never know where that's going to go. But Jason was great. So definitely check out that episode if you can. And Ryan Dangle, Jack Wright, Patrick Sheldon, myself, Logan Bradley. And we got a big episode coming this week. I won't say who yet, but we have a former Bear, former super. Yeah, right. We do have to get you back on though. It's been a while.
Why? Logan hasn't been on. That's the one. We got to get Logan on.
Yeah, Logan's great. He's doing baseball stuff right now. I know
that'll be my excuse. That'll be my excuse. Like, oh, you're doing baseball. I can't get you on. But what about how about another question? By the way, whoever the former Bears play, is it Matt Forte?
It is not. I'll give you a hint though. It's a 2006 Bear, Super Bowl Bear.
Okay. Ooh, all right. Adam, what do you think about bringing JT to this team? Would a third rounder get him from the Colts? This is interesting because we talked about this last week, and I don't mind revisiting again. You don't have to watch every minute of every show. I'm happy to repeat this, and I still feel the same way. And a lot of people online were like, they think I'm insane, but I'm like, I think we're good. Like I like Jonathan Taylor. I like him as a ball player. I think he's fine. but I think we're cool. And I know that a lot of people are like, we got to surround Justin Fields with as much talent as possible. I think that we have. I think we've put together a pretty good roster. I mean, we were talking about all the wide receivers. We did not talk about Cole Kmet getting extended, Bob Tunyon coming in, but we still have 3 pretty good backs. Khalil Herbert is capable. Deontay Foreman, I think, is a good player, and we'll see what happens with Roquan Johnson. And so I feel comfortable enough to where, like, we don't need to start and it's not throwing away because Jonathan Taylor is a good player. But at the same time, it's like, I think we're okay. I think that I don't think that we need to make that move right now. I think we can win with the guys that we have. I'm curious, Brendan, what you think of that. Should we make a move for Jonathan Taylor?
If this was fantasy football and you can just, throw out the extensions, throw out the draft picks and just say like, yeah, we want the best players on our team. Absolutely. But in the real world, I say no. And unfortunately, I mean, I don't know if a 3rd round pick gets it done. I don't know what the Colts situation is. He's still rehabbing, by the way, too, for whatever. There's mixed messages coming out of Colts camp. We don't know exactly how healthy Jonathan Taylor is, but when you trade for him, you're going to have to give up compensation. You're going to have to pay him, and you're going to have to make sure that he's healthy. And yes, he would be easily the best back in this Bears backfield. That there's no question about that. But there's a lot of unknown as well. Can Khalil Herbert take that step and become an RB1 and, improve with his pass protection? Can Deontay Foreman kind of fill that David Montgomery role as just that bruising back? And then what is Roquan Johnson going to do? I'm much more in this scenario, I am much more willing to roll the dice with one of those 3 players really taking hold of that position and being a good runner, because look, this Bears team was a fantastic rushing team last year. Yes, Justin Fields did a lot of it on his own, but Khalil Herbert led all running backs in yards per carry with 5.7. You don't do that by accident. Deontay Foreman had a career year, and he probably would have had 1,000 yards if he even just played a little bit more than McCaffrey when McCaffrey was on the Panthers. And then we just don't know what Johnson's going to bring, but he's promising. So I just wouldn't make the move now. If the Bears were, let's say, a year down the road and we saw what they could do, and they were maybe like a fringe playoff team that we knew about, and they just need to get the running game right, absolutely. But right now, I'm not doing that.
It's funny, too, because, and I've mentioned this before, Foreman, 5 games last year where he topped 100 rushing yards, and that's in limited time. Christian McCaffrey was there for the first, 7 games of the season. Mm-hmm. The Bears as a team had 5 games where they had a runner top 100 rushing yards. Justin Fields was 3 of those. Herbert was 1. David Montgomery was 1. So I feel pretty good about it. And we still have to extend Jalen Johnson. We still probably want to pay perhaps Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool. I think one of the great things that Ryan Poles has done is when he front-loaded Cole Kmet's deal, I think that kind of gave a blueprint of something that he could do with these other guys, because we still have a lot of money to spend. And since we didn't really reach the cap or get to the cap this year, like, why not put a lot of the money into this year and then move it on? I mean, we had the 10 million for Yannick, which is great. And I think like you now look at it and you're like, okay, we look like a good organization. Like, we look like a sharp organization because we had all that money and we didn't go crazy. We didn't spend all that money for McGlinchey, and I'm not even sure that McGlinchey is going to be better than Darnell Wright. And at least not 3 years from now, we'll look at those deals and say like, well, was it better to pay McGlinchey or better to use the 10th overall selection and get a 4th round pick and get Darnell Wright? We're starting to look like a competent organization, and an organization like the Chiefs, would the Chiefs make this move? The Chiefs of all teams could use Jonathan Taylor, perhaps. But I mean, like, they win with Jet McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. They don't need that. And so I would look at it the same way, like, yeah, we don't need that. We're good. We've got our guy. As long as our quarterback is good, I think we're going to be in good shape. So again, it's a nice idea. If this was Madden franchise mode, let's go for it. But in the real world, I think we have better places to put our resources. We've got a team that I think we can believe in. And as an Angels fan, the trade deadline doesn't always mean that you're going to improve your team. Okay, how about another question, though? Question for Adam. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much help will the upgraded receiving core help the offensive line? I think it will kind of mask some of the deficiencies. I think that, one of the things that, when you're Justin Fields last year and you kind of feel the pressure, you were number one looking to kind of save yourself, and then you look downfield for a second, and you're like, yeah, none of these guys. Equinemius St. Brown's not getting open. And if he is, he's going to play volleyball with it like he's St. John Smith. But I think with having DJ Moore, especially at the X position, is like you could just trust him. And like you've seen the memes, like bleep it, DJ Moore's there somewhere. I think there's something to be said about that and having that kind of receiver. So I think it helps. Like everything helps. Having good receivers helps the offensive line, helps you get rid of the ball quicker. Having trust in receivers makes the offense move smoother. And lo and behold, when things start moving smoother, you're like, oh yeah, it is nicer. Oh, maybe the offensive line isn't that terrible. I think everything helps out everything. And so, yeah, having an upgrade at the wide receiver position and looking at the room now vastly helps everybody in all facets of the offense. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think, Devin, it's a great question. I'd say if you're asking for like a number 1 to 10, I'll say 5.
He was going for a number. I would say 5 as well.
Okay, cool. So for many of the same reasons you just laid out. I mean, you're not having to worry about guys getting wide open and having trusted receivers. You can throw more into traffic and trust that they're actually going to be able to come down with the ball. And not all sacks are created equally. I think if you go back and watch what the Bears did last year, there were times when the offensive line actually gave Fields enough time, but guys just simply weren't getting open. Equinemius St. Brown at times couldn't run a curl route. And Dante Pettis, he was limited with his abilities. So being able to trust a lot of those guys, you can get rid of the ball faster, move the chains. It definitely, it helps everybody, and vice versa. Obviously, having better offensive line helps the receivers because they can get open. So it's not the end all be all, but it's definitely going to help.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, we're looking at 2 tackles that are a second-year player from Southern Utah and a first-year player, even though he's coming from Tennessee, still a rookie, so it'll help, but it's all got to kind of work together, but I think it'll be a good situation all the way around. All right, Sammy, how about another question? We have another one before we get ready to close out here. And by the way, once again, a reminder for anybody who's just recently joined us, we will be broadcasting on Saturday. I might ask them if we could do one of those things where we watch along. I don't know, but at the very least, we'll be on after the game with the Chicago Bears. They play it. What do they play? Is it 1 Eastern? I don't know.
Yeah, it should be noon Central.
10 Pacific, yeah. So trying to figure that out. Were there any other questions, Sammy? If not, it's no big deal. Gosh dang it. As Greg is a White Sox fan, I understand football can't get here fast enough. Who's your breakout rookie this year? If we're talking about the Chicago Bears, I'm going to say that I love the idea. Let's just keep it to the Bears.
Yeah.
I love the idea of Tyreek Stevenson being a player. And, I've started to go back, and this is something that Draft Dr. Phil talked about the last time we were on together. We're either here or on the Keep It at 100 show, is that when you look at Stevenson at Miami, he's still a pretty good player. But I think what Ryan Poles did is went back and discovered the player who was at Georgia. And, you talk about a player who probably should have stayed where he was, learning that lesson. When you look at his athleticism, you're like, the Bears might have really uncovered one here. And I really love it. I know they traded up for him in the second round, but I think that he is a great talent. And the more I go back and watch him play at Georgia, I'm like, oh my God, if this guy can develop, you mentioned it earlier. Like you stopped yourself from saying that this could be one of the top defenses or secondaries in the NFL, but there is going to be a lot of talent on that defensive secondary to where I, like you, feel very confident with it. But who on this team is a rookie? Let's keep it to the Bears.
Yeah.
I will tell you as well, if I'm looking at the, I will give you one outside of the Bears. If Zach Charbonnet can stay healthy, Kenneth Walker is on our S list for what he did with the at the Cam Hayward Celebrity Softball Tournament. Like, it's one thing if you blow us off. You're blowing off Cam Hayward.
Oh, he didn't show up?
He didn't show up. He had, because, he's battling injuries now. I actually had the scoop. He blamed the injuries. And there's Britt Baker, who's struggling with the back injury, who is not cleared by AEW doctors to go out there and play softball. She got on a plane, got to Pittsburgh. She was not going to miss it. So I like Zach Charbonnet. I don't know. Yeah. So what about you? Pick a Bear, and if you have one outside of the Bears, who are you looking at?
All right, I'm not going to pick him because I think it's a good pick, but with Stevenson, somebody's going to have to get those targets in terms of, covering wide receivers. Are they really going to throw at Jalen Johnson? A lot of the times they left him kind of on an island in certain games. Kyler Gordon, I don't know how much. Obviously, like, all guys are going to get their targets, but I think Stevenson's going to get picked on, and he's going to come down with some of those like 50-50 balls. So I'm excited to see him play. But my breakout is Gervon Dexter. Now, there's been some mixed reports, and kind of, some days he's getting through the offensive line and he's wreaking havoc. Other times you've probably heard about his get off. It's not as fast or as quick as it needs to be, but he's making plays, just blowing up interiors of the offensive line. He had one today where I believe it was Tevin Jenkins. He blew past, would have had a sack. He's really coming on strong, and he's motivated. He had a great quote about just, I want my legacy here to be my number in the rafters. And of course, Bears aren't probably retiring any more numbers, but I love the sentiment that that's what you're going for. I really think he's going to be a guy who's going to get those situational rushing opportunities, potentially as a one tech, maybe a 3. I don't know. We'll see how Alan Williams wants to use him, but I think he's definitely going to come down with some of he's going to blow up some of those plays in the interior of the offensive line. And I think we're going to look back and say that was a really good pick.
Yeah, I believe the same thing. I liked all those picks, especially in the second round. And some of those guys, again, it depends on, when you look at film or when you look at statistics and you're like, well, this guy didn't produce, but you have to remember what Florida was asking him to do. And it wasn't, it's not an eye-popping statistic driven position at that university. So that'll be a lot of fun. But in any event, I want to thank you for being here, for spending some time with us here this evening. Once again, to put over the Bear Down Chicago pod, they're going to be having Olin Kreutz on. So that's my guess. That's just my guess. I don't know. I have he won't tell me. If it's Devin Hester, that would be a good get too. Oh,
it's not Hester, unfortunately, but no, we're excited though, and it'll be a fun recap after the preseason game as well. We're all itching to get there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We're going to be doing a cross promotion with our Sick podcast from Tennessee. It'll be fun because I'll be able to check because I'll give a little critique for the Tennessee Titans. I don't know how much DeAndre Hopkins is going to play, but it'll be fun to kind of see. They're going to have one of their assistant coaches out there. Yeah. They're like, listen, they know that Mike Vrabel's a good coach. So like, we're fine. Let's get one of these. And it's also a good showcase, for some of these coordinators to get an opportunity to go out there and show what they can do to get a head start in the next coaching cycle. But we'll also be able to get some insight from the Tennessee fans to kind of see, maybe, how they feel about some of our players. So it'll be pretty interesting to go out and do that. But yeah, that's it. That's what we got. Anything else I need to promote?
You can read my work at bearswire.com. Just put out like some observations. I talked about many of them that we talked about today. Last thing I'll say in terms of observations, as well as Justin Fields' improved mechanics, talking about the ball coming out livelier. I should have mentioned, I think his mechanics tweaks have done well with that. Cairo Santos looked good today. He's the lone kicker. So I no issues with the kicker today. That's always a good note to end on. But yeah, follow me on bearswire.com, as well as our entire staff. We're putting out content every single day. And then of course, as you mentioned a few times, the Bear Down Chicago podcast, we have episodes every Sunday, and yeah, we just can't wait for the season and really appreciate you having me on as always, Adam.
The pleasure is all on this side of the microphone. We appreciate you doing it. And for everybody who is here tonight, if you enjoyed the show, be sure to comment using the word sick. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please do. And of course, if you're listening to us as a podcast, like, subscribe, rate, all that good stuff. We appreciate you being here. We'll be joining you on Saturday at some point, talking about the Bears Titans. Looking forward to that. So for Brendan, for Anello, and Sammy, bear down. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Brought to you by Underdog Fantasy.